Welcome to Discussions with the Writer Fred, right here at Black Video Network in good old San Antonio, Texas. We are the voice for the black community here in the city. This month is Hispanic Heritage Month, and so out of respect to all my fellow Hispanics, I've invited a very good friend of mine who we served on the Citizens Advisory Board for years and fought all those racist cops that used to come in there, is Judge Rosie Gonzalez. Judge, welcome to Discussions with the Writer Fred.
Thank you for having me, Fred. And like I told you when I came in, when you call, I answer.
Well,
so here I am.
Okay. Before we get started on our subject, which is about Hispanic Heritage Month, we were talking before we went on camera about what you do in your court, which is a court of domestic violence.
It is.
County Court 13.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell our viewers what you've been doing within your court?
So we hear nothing but domestic violence cases, and at the misdemeanor level. So what does that mean? That means the range of punishment for everyone that comes into County Court 13 is no more than 1 year of incarceration at the Bexar County Jail. The court can fine them up to $4,000. And they could possibly, and in most cases, lose their Second Amendment constitutional right to bear firearms, guns, and have ammunition.
Oh, okay.
So those are the worst consequences. We do have opportunities for defendants to work a case to a level that they can get it dismissed and expunged. I created a program called Reflejo Court, Reflection. And it provides only first-time offenders of domestic violence the opportunity to get trauma treatment, to get sober, and to get a job in housing. And if they graduate successfully, their case is not only dismissed, but expunged. And here's why we're doing it and why we decided to do it. 90% of the people that are coming into County Court 13 are getting arrested under the influence of alcohol, cocaine, meth.
Oh, okay.
And when you talk to that universe, Fred, almost 100% of them self-disclose that they are adult survivors of childhood trauma and childhood abuse.
Really?
So
they experience.
Yes. And so what is a 5, 6, 7-year-old to do when their parent or the person that they love the most is the person hurting them, abusing them? So what do they do with that shame, that anger, that depression, that anxiety? They don't know how to modulate that. So they get a little older and they start experimenting with their brother's pot, their dad's beer, the neighbor's cocaine, and then it makes them feel better, right? So it becomes an addiction. And so they come to us with trauma and addiction. And the program treats both.
Okay.
Desmond Tutu, Bishop Tutu, used to say, we have to stop pulling the drowning people out of the river. And we need to go upstream and find out why they're falling into the river in the first place. Yeah. And so what we've discovered is that first place is trauma. The Surgeon General from California, Dr. Burke, has a lot of information and data gathered on what untreated trauma can result into as an adult for a child. It results in fibromyalgia, lupus, chronic diseases, even cancer, a lifetime of anxiety and depression. That's what untreated trauma looks like in an adult. And so we're wanting to cut it at, stave it off, cut it at the bud, nip it at the bud, and then make sure that we heal these people, because if we don't heal them, Fred, they have the potential of creating no less than 10 more victims in their lifetime.
And they could, yours is at the misdemeanor level, and
yes,
it could graduate to the felony
yes,
level.
And even as misdemeanors, you could get labeled as a violent offender, and you know what happens to people that take that label with them through life? They are denied college financial aid. They don't qualify. They, by law, cannot be a primary conservator of children that they are parents to. They can be denied access to living arrangements, housing, rental, leases based on their violent offender label. They lose their right to have guns and firearms for protection. So there's a number of things that happen to a person that makes them homeless, it can make them uneducated, they lose their kids, they lose their ability to protect themselves. And that creates an invisible population that doesn't advance in our community.
Wow,
And so
yeah.
when we talk about justice,
Yeah.
isn't justice also part of healing someone to become a better person?
Mm-hmm.
Not just locking them up and throwing away the key, but giving them the opportunity, the tools to become a better person, to heal, so that they can join the rest of us in the community and become productive members with us.
So you would be an activist judge, wouldn't you?
Just like the Supreme Court is now, huh?
But for the right reason.
But, you know, I believe I'm doing it for all the right reasons.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Well, let's skip into our subject
Sure.
here. There are a lot of critics that will say there's no need for Hispanic Heritage Month and no need for Black History Month. How do you respond to those
You
critics?
know, in my experience, it's been that, and I'm closer to 58 than I am to 57. I'm on the
Okay.
heels of 60, and in my experience, unless people of color pushed for their rightful seat at the table, we were only thrown scraps of that. And so I believe that in order for us to make inroads to access to better quality of life, we had to create those safe spaces for our people, whether it's the Mexican American Bar Association, the Hispanic Issues Section, the Hispanic Alumni Association from the law school, the San Antonio Black Lawyers Association. And I think it was a way to highlight that we have our own superstars. We have our own goals to do better and give back to our community that you as a dominant power culture is choosing to ignore and to keep us in the shadows and to keep us uneducated and to keep us feeling like we don't belong. We don't need to belong to you. We got our own game that we're playing. We got our own resources, and we can do it just as well, sometimes even better than you.
Would you consider that like isolationist or separatist, moving away from the general society?
Well, we have a country that values assimilation, right?
Yeah.
And so everybody wants us to speak with a certain dialect. They want us to
Yeah.
look a certain way.
Right.
And they want us to, you know, act a certain way. And at the same time, we're this melting pot. We're this beacon of diversity for the rest of the world, where we tell you it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your beginnings are. You can chase that dream in America, and you can become, you can prosper and provide for your family. And what we're finding out is that only if you look a certain way, or only if you talk a certain way, you know, is that dream afforded to you. And as people of color, we're seeing the browning, not only of America, the browning of Texas. And for those of us that are in positions of influence and power, many of us believe we don't shut the door behind us. We kick it open and we bring those people with us, because we have a tremendous amount of talent within the Black community,
We
within
certainly
the
do.
Hispanic community, that can create beautiful things for us. Not just business opportunities, but art and poetry. We've got brilliant doctors. We've got phenomenal lawyers. We've got a lot of talent. And sometimes I feel like the dwindling dominant culture is feeling that pinch of they're losing their influence, because we're stepping in and saying, we don't need to influence you. We got our own people that we need to serve and do well for.
Okay, that leads me to the next subject I want to discuss with you. You say they recognize their need for you. And I want to shift that to the Republican Party when we come back from our break.
Yes, sir.
And talk about how the Republican Party is trying to win over Hispanics, Mexican Americans, especially in Texas.
Sure.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Take a quick break here with discussions with the writer Fred, with Judge Rosie Gonzalez, and we'll be right back.
2021 is complete. Good or bad, you made it through. The year of many firsts. It will not be easily forgotten. The Black Book Yearbook will help you capsule the year that was 2021. Own your part of history. Get your yearbook today at blacksinsanantonio.com. For the latest news and community activities, visit our companion site, blackvideonews.com, celebrating over 10 years of documenting the community.
My My Shiro doesn't always wear a cape, but she always has time for a hug, a smile, for going the extra mile. My Shiro stretches every dollar, puts in long hours, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. When you're ready to retire, we want you to be able to enjoy it. It's time to start saving now. A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today. Visit aceyourretirement.org/Shiro.
Welcome back to Discussions with the Writer Fred right here at Black Video News in San Antonio, Texas. As I said, we are the voice for the black community here in San Antonio, Texas, and I am so pleased to be with my old friend, Judge Rosie Gonzalez, and we're discussing a number of issues.
You knew me back when, Fred.
I knew you back when. Yeah, when we were fighting all those racist cops that were coming in before the board. Yeah,
we did see some amazing things on
Oh
that
my
board.
God! And
We can't talk about it though, right? We're sworn to confidentiality.
Yeah, but I know I'd look at some of those policemen around the board when you were drilling the policemen. Oh man, they were like they wanted to attack you.
You know, we had to get to the bottom of it.
We're the only two that seem to take on what that role was supposed to be, to represent the people.
Yes.
And we did that.
With pride.
With pride,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Well, before we get started, I want to throw another question at you. We're going to talk about the shift, what it seems to be a shift of the Hispanic population to the Republican Party. But before we do that, what do you think about all the attention that the passing of Queen Elizabeth is having in this country? I mean, media covers it all the time. I don't care what they're doing. They interrupt their programming. And it makes me think, you know, why so much coverage of the Queen who was of another country?
Well, you come from media outlet, you come from a newspaper background, and you know you have to sell newspapers, right?
Mm.
And I believe that in our age of ADD and in our age of instant gratification, that the media really picks stories that get them the most clicks, that get someone distracted to watch them. And, you know, it doesn't, you know, it coincides with Diana's 25th anniversary of her passing.
That's
you know,
right,
that just happened earlier in September. And she was very popular worldwide. I think depending on how well versed you are on the history of that crown, that's going to dictate your response to her passing.
Thank you.
And so if you're a member of a group that the crown colonized,
Yes.
you're hooting and hollering like the Munchkins did when the witch died, right? But if you're not and you're part of that culture of royalty,
Yes.
then you're mourning her. Now, she did do a lot of things that for women, you know, rode motorcycles, rode horses, jumped out of airplanes at the Super Bowl kind of thing. And, you know, from that vantage point, I think inspired a lot of women to be able to say, you know, if the Queen can do it, I can do it. But that still doesn't take the taint away, I believe, from a lot of the atrocities that I believe the crown had a hand in.
Absolutely.
In the colonization of many small countries around the world.
Right, and she never spoke out. I don't think she ever apologized for what they did.
Not like the Pope did, right, in Canada.
Yeah, she never did that. And she never did speak out. Maybe it wasn't her role, but being in such an influential position and seeing how she has influence here, she never spoke out on civil rights or the assassination of Dr. King. She never took a position. And then that poor young girl, Megan, I think is her name.
They sure tapped that down quick, right? My understanding, it was either now King Charles or her husband, Philip, who was the person that asked, and this is what led to to Harry and Meghan leaving, is that one of them asked Harry, what are we going to do if the baby is born black?
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the last straw for them.
Oh, taint that royal blood. Yeah. And did she ever take a strong position?
Not that I didn't read anything about it. I'm not aware of anything. I could be wrong.
Well, I was talking to a friend. I called him and says, you know, I'm watching all this coverage on CNN and MSNBC. How do you feel? He says, I ain't feeling about the Queen at all. And I think that might be, I don't want to speak out of turn, but that might be how Black America feels about, I compare it to when Reagan died, and this whole country was just glorifying him, except Black America. Because
It's like,
he was
why
never
aren't
a
we,
friend of
why
ours.
aren't we talking about Bernard Shaw?
Right, very
You know?
little coverage on Bernard
And he was a
Shaw.
phenomenal journalist.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he was there to greet her because he died just, a day, I think, before her.
Definitely.
And
yeah.
so why aren't we celebrating him?
Not at all.
And we should be. He provided a large contribution to the makeup of what journalism is now.
And CNN, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. But he didn't have the royal blood.
We don't know
Judge.
that. He could have come from African royalty.
But, yeah. Okay. Well, let's skip to our subject here in our second segment. Why is this? There seems to be a movement among Hispanic Mexican Americans in Texas. I think Mexican Americans in Texas are more conservative than Mexican Americans in California. There seems to be a move towards the Republican Party, even with Donald Trump, who doesn't respect any people of color, none of us. Okay, how could they be moving towards the Republican Party?
Well, my observation is they're not moving toward the party. The party's moving toward them. Our conflict, inner conflict, is as old as the conquest. How is it that hundreds of tribes could adore Hernan Cortés as he slaughtered them? When the Spaniards came...
Hold up, where was that? When
that was the
to my
colonization
viewers?
of Mexico.
Okay.
Right, the conquest.
Okay.
When Hernan Cortés came here as a rogue conquistador without any authority from the crown and conquered the Aztecs, along with all these surrounding tribes, we had 26 million, that's a low estimate, of indigenous peoples and tribes living in what we now know as the Americas. Mm-hmm. And by the time they were done colonizing and had settled in and gotten comfortable, there were at best 4 to 6 million indigenous people left. Yet,
So they slaughtered all these people.
either slaughtered them, raped them, or infected them with smallpox.
Mm-hmm.
And, they had gunpowder. We didn't.
Right, yeah.
And so it was horrendous experience for the indigenous peoples. And it started then. The people that wanted to survive wanted to become part of the power culture, the conqueror, in order for them to live. Now, it's easy to identify, in many cases, the black vote. There's no question which block you're with. Mm-hmm. But with Hispanics, we have this kaleidoscope of shades, kaleidoscope of dialects, kaleidoscope of origins. Mm-hmm. And so you have people in Monterey with blue eyes and red hair, of Mexican nationality, but can maybe trace their roots to the Irish battalions that came to help in the fight in the Mexican, in the Spanish-American War. Mm-hmm. And so there's this dynamic of wanting to fit in, of being accepted, of arriving. If you make a certain amount of money, if you align yourself with a certain political party, and you just kind of have to sit back and watch. But I don't believe that Hispanics are becoming members of the Republican Party at a higher rate. What I believe is that the Republican Party is recognizing the browning of Texas. And they know that in order for the party to survive, they're going to have to start noticing and bringing in people of color to their party. And not by way of signing them up, but by just acknowledging them. If you look at Bexar County politics, tell me how many Latinos have been able to run a successful campaign under the Bexar County Republican Party?
Very few,
If any.
if any.
Yeah.
So is that going to change?
I don't think it's going to change. If it was going to change, you see Maida Flores out of the valley, and she didn't think that they were going to do anything to her. They're going to treat her with the red carpet, and guess what? The minute she arrived in D.C., her own party started attacking her. Welcome to the Republican Party, Miss Maida.
Yeah. We're going to take another break here. You hit on something that I'd like to explore just a little. That is taking on the attributes of the majority to be able to fit in, to become a part of that. And here's the question I want to ask you. How does that affect Hispanic, Mexican Americans relating to us as blacks? Because one thing you had to do, as Maya Angelou or Toni Morrison said, if you want to fit into America, learn how to use the N-word. So I just want to explore that for a minute.
Okay.
We'll be right back with discussions with the writer Fred right here at Black Video News in San Antonio, Texas.
Veterans, when you're struggling, soon becomes later, becomes someday, becomes when. Don't wait. Reach out.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Hello, this is Cornell with Frost Bank.
Hi there, this is Terry with Frost.
Good evening, this is Franklin.
This is Robert with Frost.
Hello, this is Rosemary with Frost Bank.
Welcome back to the discussion with the writer Fred with my good friend Judge Rosie Gonzalez, who is a great judge. I know that because she's a great individual. And again,
Thank you,
thank
Fred.
you for being here.
And thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll have you back.
Yes, sir.
For sure. So let's explore this relationship of Mexican Americans to Black Americans here in Texas.
Okay.
What is the relationship like? I've heard blacks complain that Mexican Americans think they're better than Black Americans. And there was an old saying that the closer you look to being white, the more you accepted into white society.
I think that's a true statement.
That is.
And I think that there's a dynamic and phenomenon, not just among Mexican Americans and blacks, but as we were discussing on break, the different shades of brown.
Okay.
And much like the old saying with the Davidians, right? It wasn't the Davidians, it was the higher the hair, the closer to God. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
I think the lighter the skin, the more you feel like you're going to get accepted by the dominant, powerful culture, which is losing power and losing dominance. And that when we're watching the browning of America in Texas.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that we don't really talk about is how there was a time, y'all, you know what happened in Oklahoma with the raising of Black Wall Street, but Oklahoma also has a history of having indigenous peoples owning slaves and being paid for goods with chattel, with human chattel. And so I think there's been some historical information to back up that we've been set up to challenge each other, to not be friends,
Right.
to be set up as enemies because we're all fighting for the same amount of limited resources.
Well, is it that, or is it truly that Mexican Americans feel they are better than blacks? And it's like everyone who comes to America, let me just say, I mentioned it earlier when Toni Morrison said, if you want to become a good American, learn how to use the N-word. Is there any truth within the Mexican American culture of that existing?
I can't say there isn't any truth to it, and this is not a story that I share lightly. I can tell you my mom sharing a story about my grandfather, and he used to work for the civic defense, right? The guys that Eisenhower recruited across the country to build what we now know as our freeway system.
Yeah, highways.
And my grandfather was a part of one of those work teams that went out to build those roads. And he was a very racist man. His father was an Indian trader, and he was one of many children that Indian trader had between South Texas and Oklahoma.
Okay, explain Indian trader to my
Someone
viewers.
that took Indian wares and went and sold them for a profit outside of the Native American culture.
Oh, okay.
And so my grandfather was part of the team that built roads and would travel from place to place. And one time came home and told a story about the N-word and how he had gotten into it with a black man on his work team. And the black man confronted him and said, when I turned my back, did you just call me an N-word nigger? Mm-hmm. And my grandfather said, I don't need to call you something I already know you are. Mm. And that was part of the story, and I was like, that's kind of hateful. Growing up the way I grew up, but it was part of their generational experience. Uh-huh. And, that was a story he liked to tell. And I think it goes to your statement that there is a certain section, but I don't think it's just Mexican Americans. I think it's anybody that's part of a culture that is lighter skinned than darker skinned. Mm-hmm.
And that exists within the Mexican American culture.
I think it does. I think it does. It doesn't make it right, no. I think it's shameful. I think we're all children of God, and we're all brothers and sisters on earth to take care of each other. But it's a way to divide and conquer.
How did we all get stuck with this idea that the lighter you are, the better you are as a human being?
Well, I think if we do the research, we'll find that was a phenomena that occurred in the Christianization of Europe. Because you and I know,
Christianization of Europe.
You and I know Jesus Christ of Nazareth, the carpenter, was not white. Right. When you go into biblical passages and you read that the palms of his hands and the soles of his feet were golden, that his hair was like lamb's wool. I don't know any white person that looked like that. Yeah. And so for some reason, I'm not aware of, the whiteness is directly associated with cleanliness or goodness or sainthood or godliness.
And did that happen through definition of words? Like white is what you just said, black is evil, demonic, and terrible. And
wouldn't that be a great research project to try and figure out how these words ended up having those meanings?
Same meanings, because words do have meanings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they translate.
Absolutely.
You can think of this country over 250 years or longer than that. There's a certain segment of the society who still feel that way.
Yes.
I'm white, so I'm superior.
Yes.
Just because I'm white.
Yes.
Well, let's get to my producer and owner over there, Carl's question. What is the distinction between in Rodriguez using the Z and using the S?
So what I've learned in my studies and research is that when the conquest came to this side of the world, the Catholic Church brought with them the money counters, the bean counters, and they happened to be the Jewish people. And because the Catholic Church believed that the handling of money was sinful, was dirty. So they brought a segment with them that could handle money for them.
Let's say that over again, write that part. The who?
The handling of money, the Catholic Church and the Spaniards believed that the handling of money was sinful, was dirty. And so they brought with them a Jewish population of bankers and merchants.
To handle the money?
To handle the money. And so they came along willingly because they were running from being murdered in Europe for their beliefs, right? You had to be with the Catholic Church, and if you weren't with them, you were against them.
Right.
Right? Yeah. And so you saw the slaughter of other religions and other peoples in the name of God, right? And so the Jewish population came over here just like the Quakers, not only to serve the crown, but also to exercise religious freedom. But when they arrived here, they got a very rude awakening and were told, you're either with us or you're against us. You're either going to convert to Catholicism or you're going to be ostracized.
Okay.
And we will hunt you down like we did in Europe to make sure that, we'll burn you at the stake. And so there was an underground movement because, just like with any other strong culture and religion, you hold on to it to your last breath, right? If it's part of your DNA, part of your culture. Right. And there was those who assimilated and those who didn't. and those who didn't and kept their faith, even in the shadows, kept the Z's in their last names, and those that assimilated changed the Z's to S's.
Okay.
And that's how I've learned the difference between an S and a Z.
Judge, you are just great. I mean, this is just really, you're full of so much good information that my viewers, I know, appreciate. So, in your closing remarks, what would you say to our viewers?
I would say put all those trifling thoughts aside of competition against each other, of hurting each other, and let's come together. Let's come together for the good of all peoples, of all our brown brothers and sisters.
Okay.
We've been denied prosperity. We've been denied equality. We've been denied equity. We've been denied a whole lot. And the only way we're going to turn this ship around and make sure that everyone in our community, in Texas, and in our country, in the world, has a better life than the one we entered into the world, we need to exercise the power of our voice, and that comes through the power of our vote. So the one thing I would ask everyone to do is get registered to vote, get out there and vote, and vote your voice. And I'm not telling you which way to vote, but the exercise of voting is what's important to us.
Not only are you a tremendous success, but your wife is too. Could you tell our viewers just a little bit about what she does?
Dr. Stacy Spielin Gonzalez is a PhD doctor. She owns Salient Counseling. She's an expert on trauma and addiction.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Judge, for being here with Discussion with the Writer Fred. Thank you all for viewing Discussion with the Writer Fred, because you know, as usual, we telling our story our way.